everybody. Welcome to a slightly belated edition of Biters.
Never podcast on a Wednesday.
Why do you say that?
My computer needed updates. You had to update the call recorder. The computers just don't like podcasting on a Wednesday.
But we needed the extra day because you had a terrible migraine.
Yes, I had a 2-day-long migraine. I have a lot of work stress, and so I find that I clench my jaw all the time. And I actually, ironically, had a dentist appointment today, and he's like, yep, you need a $300 bite guard.
Oh, great.
I know. And that's on top of my nightly, okay, so I don't wear them every night, but it's a retainer, and they're kind of like Invisalign. So it keeps me from actually grinding all of the enamel off my teeth, but I'm still clenching my jaw and causing myself headaches.
So totally off the topic of zombies and the zombie apocalypse, I was actually told by a patient whose mom worked in the dental industry for years that you can get like a clinical quality bite guard on Amazon for like $80.
I'll have to check into that because the $300 was after my amazing insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for anybody out there who's grinding their teeth, check Amazon. Supposedly you can get an $80 mouth guard that does everything the mouth guard your dentist is going to make for you does.
I'll have to check the reviews. Speaking of reviews, we are reviewing 28 Days Later for this episode.
Yes, we are. And I'm going to let you give us your rating first because my rating is really long.
So I love this movie. I've always loved this movie from the first time I saw it to the first time I saw the alternate ending to the other alternate ending, which we'll talk about.
Oh, yeah. You reminded me I was going to pull those references up.
Right. And so I gave it a 4.25 infected chimpanzees. And IMDb calls them apes, but I'm pretty sure those are chimps.
They were definitely chimps.
Okay. So 4.25.
Very good. Well, I'm pulling up the wiki for 28 Days Later so we can talk about those alternate endings. But, okay, bear with me because, like I said, my rating is really long. I gave it 3.58 out of 5. What did I just watch moments? Mediocre with a glimmer of brilliance, also known as I love Marnell, but we have very different taste in movies moments. Additionally referred to as the thank you for expanding my horizon moments.
Oh, I am about to change your mind. This movie is amazing.
So the people who responded on our Facebook page, and we'll get to that later, by and large gave it really positive reviews.
See?
There were definitely some things to love about this movie.
Yeah.
They kind of lost me in the middle part.
Yeah, okay, so this is one thing that you see a lot of on the reviews is it flips between really high kinetic energy scenes that have like fast cuts and things like that to long moments of deep intimacy of like humanity. So I can see how you could get lost in the middle somewhere.
The pacing for me was kind of challenging, but we'll talk about that.
Alrighty.
So I do have some numbers. It has an 86% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. 85% of the nearly 500,000 people who responded rated it as they liked it.
See?
It has a 7.6 out of 10 rating on IMDb. And it had huge box office.
It did. So its budget was $8 million, which is a pittance for a movie.
Especially compared to what it earned.
Right. It earned about 10 times that worldwide.
Yeah.
And with limited release.
Looks like the box office receipts, and I think this was just for the US, were just shy of $45 million. And it had an $85 million take worldwide. Yep. Which is just crazy. That's a huge amount of money for a small movie.
Right. Could you imagine earning more than 10 times what you spent on the movie? Mm-hmm. I mean, and it was a critical hit too. It wasn't just a box office hit for its limited release. It was a critical hit, and it's become kind of a cult movie because it's credited with re-jumpstarting the zombie genre.
So I have some questions about that. I have so many questions. So it came out in the UK around, it looks like it came out in the UK February 1st, 2002.
Mm-hmm.
Came out in the US June of 2003.
Mm-hmm.
Walking Dead, I believe, started publishing comics around 2003. So which story came first? The story of Jim comatose in the hospital, or the story of Rick comatose in the hospital?
Okay, so I can't remember what I listened to or what I read, but this has actually been robbed from other horror / zombie films or books or things like that, where someone wakes up in a hospital bed long after, patient zero.
Right, whatever cataclysm has happened.
Right. And so I don't want to say rip off. It's almost like an homage to stories from the past. But so one of the things that 28 Days Later does is they take a whole bunch of pieces of like man's inhumanity to man,
Mm-hmm.
and our violence and our tendency towards violence and things like that. And it takes things from other movies or film or television, and it kind of put it in the movie. And so that's not a completely original thought. So the parallels between Rick waking up in the hospital long after the zombie apocalypse had started and Jim waking up in the hospital, it's kind of a common theme. So
do you think this movie was percolating in Robert Kirkman's consciousness at all?
I don't know. I find it interesting, though, that we have The Walking Dead, which was a graphic novel that became a show, and 28 Days Later, that was a movie that became a graphic novel.
Mm-hmm.
So I love it all.
Well, like I said, there were definitely things to love. So I'm with you at least part of the way.
Good.
So our title was pretty obvious. I didn't really have anything about the title other than at the very end, we have another 28 Days Later.
Right. And we have a sequel that was spawned 28 weeks later.
And then there's some conversation, at least there was around 2007 or 2008, about having a third movie in the series.
Which would be amazing. Because, I mean, you could do it without any of the original cast, which is what they did with the sequel. You could follow up with a different band of survivors and pick up 28 years later, But I have a funny story about the name of the movie. So my other half and I were watching it the other night, and somewhere in the middle of the movie, he's like, how long do you think it's been since the apocalypse happened? And I'm like, 28 days. And he's hilarious. Like, oh man, I can't believe I missed that. It's right in the title. And I was like, and I completely missed my opportunity to be a smartass and say 4 weeks. It's a thinker.
That is really funny.
Isn't that? I mean, it's just one of those 28 days.
So I wanted to comment about the sequel, which I may or may not watch. I kind of have mixed feelings about it.
Jeremy Renner and Idris Elba. That's right? All I gotta say.
Well, you know, I looked at the cast and Robert Carlyle, who Danny Boyle directed in Trainspotting.
And Trainspotting too.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not entirely writing it off, but I might have to have it as an assignment at some point later in our podcasting career. So, segueing into director, Danny Boyle was our director. He is probably best known for Slumdog Millionaire, this movie, and the Trainspotting movies.
Right.
He won a whole bunch of awards for Slumdog Millionaire. He won a Golden Globe, a Directors Guild Award, a BAFTA, and an Oscar for directing Slumdog Millionaire. which I am ashamed to say I've never seen. I heard it was great.
I also have actually never seen it. It didn't really speak to me. I don't know what about it that just I passed it over. Yeah.
He also did a movie about Steve Jobs in 2015 called Steve Jobs, and it had Michael Fassbender, Kate Winslet, and Seth Rogen of Preacher fame.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he has, I thought this was really funny, a 2008 movie called Vacuuming Completely Nude in Paradise.
Okay, I just saw this and I'm like, I need to seek this out and watch it.
That was totally the way I felt when I saw the title. I was like, oh my God, that's perfect.
So what's funny is I know him actually mostly from A Life Less Ordinary in 2000. Yeah, I am a big Ewan McGregor fan, and so that was one that I think I watched shortly after it came out, probably on video.
Sorry.
And then he directed a video short, Iggy Pop, Lust for Life.
Mm-hmm.
Love that song. And then he also directed 127 Hours with, what's his name? James Franco. The true story of the guy who got, like, the climber who got his arm.
Who ended up cutting his own arm off to free himself. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never actually seen it, but I'm familiar with the subject matter, so I had no idea that he directed the movie.
Well, so he apparently passed on a really big movie, and I can't remember which movie it was because there were about 3 big movies that he passed on to direct A Life Less Ordinary.
Huh.
So he passed on Alien Resurrection, Fight Club, and 8 Mile because of various conflicts in scheduling.
Wow. It looks like he also directed a version of Frankenstein with Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller.
Oh, I bet that was actually really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's incredibly well known. I mean, I didn't realize until I started digging into it who Danny Boyle was and that he had done this movie.
Yeah, and I think for me, he's probably best known for Trainspotting.
Uh-huh.
I love that movie. And the second one actually was not a bad sequel. They picked up, for as much time as it had been in real life, they picked up with the guys' story. And so, yeah. Also, The Beach. He directed The Beach.
With Leonardo DiCaprio.
Leonardo DiCaprio. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Who he wanted to play Jim in this movie.
Oh, really?
Yep. But I think Leonardo either backed out of the project or had a prior engagement.
Ah, okay. Well, I noticed in just kind of looking over Danny Boyle's stuff that one of the things that he is known for is often casting actually, I think it's Cillian Murphy, the guy who played Jim.
Mm-hmm.
That he's worked with him quite a bit.
Yeah.
He was also the artistic director for the 2012 Olympics in London, which I thought was kind of cool.
Huh. That's interesting. I wonder exactly what the artistic director does.
I think they probably coordinate all of the extravaganzas that we see at like the opening ceremonies and the closing ceremonies and, all of the stuff that we really watch for the splash bang on television.
Right.
I also read that he said that 28 Days Later was the first widely distributed release on digital format.
Mm-hmm.
And he called it the guerrilla nature of the film. So it was different in terms of the way that it was shot and produced than anything previously had been.
Right. I did see something about that. And the movie is actually, if you slow down and actually look at that sort of thing, I'm not a huge cinematography fan, but the way that they used saturation of light and the making scenes more blue or more red, depending on what they were trying to depict.
Oh, yeah. Like I'm thinking about that scene by the lakeside that was kind of a blissful scene, all of them together before they got to the military compound.
Right. And
that was very blue.
And in the hospital scene, when he first wakes up and is wandering around the hospital, it's very oversaturated with light, and so it has a dreamlike quality. And then the quick takes and the tinting of red towards the end when we get to the climax of the movie, the way that they shot the film enabled them to do all of these things and make the movie what it was, which is visually stunning if you go back and watch it like that.
I was just thinking there are definitely things that stick for me in terms of being very similar images to what I've seen in Walking Dead, and there were some things that made me think of World War Z also.
Right, which came out much later.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this was our introduction to quote unquote fast zombies.
Yes, which we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
So our writer was a guy named Alex Garland, and he is an English novelist, a screenwriter, and a producer and director in his own right.
Right.
He is best known for The Beach. I don't know if it was a screenplay or a novel called Sunshine, and then, of course, 28 Days Later, all of which were directed as movies by Danny Boyle.
Danny Boyle, yep. So he wrote the screenplay for Dread, which was the kind of reboot of Judge Dredd.
I was wondering if it was a follow-up to that.
It was, and it was much, much better.
So he wrote a movie called Ex Machina. Have you seen that?
I haven't, but I have heard a lot about it.
Yeah, I've heard some really amazing reviews of that movie.
So he also wrote part of Annihilation, which was a really good movie. Another really visually stunning movie. It had Natalie Portman in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of aliens or something, like a comet or something hits Earth, and everywhere around it starts to expand this sort of accelerated, altered evolution of plants and animals, and things start to merge, and so you have like animals that are plants and plants that are animals, and all these
interesting,
really alien species start happening on Earth, and the bubble of what's happening gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so she's one of the people that's sent in to explore this new terrain, and yeah, it's a crazy, crazy movie. But I thought it was well worth it.
Cool. What else was I going to say about him? Oh, he's writing a screenplay for Halo, which is a movie based on the video game.
Right. Which neither of us play.
No, but I actually worked with a physician whose son was one of the primary creators for Halo.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I know about it.
Man, that's just like one of those 6-degree things.
Totally.
We are only 6 degrees away from anybody else on this planet.
Yeah, I have a link to the guy who wrote Halo, or who created Halo.
Oh, so, yeah.
So I had asked you to look at Naomi Harris as our featured cast.
You did.
Because I really loved Selena. I definitely think she was something to love as a part of this movie.
Yes. And, I had no idea how big of an actress she was until I went back and watched 28 Days Later and then did some research on her.
I was really surprised too. I've seen her before and I didn't realize I had.
Right? Like, she is just all over the place. So most people, I think, would probably know her from her character in Pirates of the Caribbean.
And that's where I was like, oh my gosh, okay, now I know, I recognize her.
Right. She was Tia Dalma, which she was the voodoo witch from Pirates of the Caribbean, multiple sequels. And she is also Eve Moneypenny in the modern Bond films.
And apparently there is some talk that she is going to be in the newest Bond film.
She is, Bond 25. And I can't believe what's his name signed on to do it again.
There was some conversation. I watched a little interview with her where she was talking about Cillian Murphy potentially being the new Bond.
Well, and she says that she is probably the reason why people thought Idris Elba was going to be the new Bond.
I saw that too.
Someone asked her if she thought he would make a good James Bond, and she's like, absolutely, yes. And she's like, from thereafter, everyone was like, ooh, Idris Elba's going to be the next Bond. And she's like, no.
He would be a great Bond.
So yeah, I can't believe Daniel Craig signed on because he seems to hate playing Bond. I've heard some interviews where he doesn't like the role or something. They must have thrown a lot of money at him. But guess who else is rumored to be in the next Bond film?
Tell me.
Rami Malek.
Oh, cool.
Yes, from Bohemian Rhapsody and Mr. Robot.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love him.
Mm-hmm.
So, Naomi Harris was also in a movie called Moonlight.
Which I watched some clips from it. I actually didn't see the movie, and I'm sorry that I didn't because I watched some clips, and she just looks phenomenal in that movie.
Well, she was nominated for an Academy Award for that movie, so which is why I bring it up. I think it's been one that's been on the list, but it's kind of further down on the list, so I might have to check that out now that I know that she is in it.
What's really interesting is she made a blanket statement a while ago that she would never play a crack mom. You know, that she would never play a crack addict. And she had some real heartburn about taking the role because the character is drug addicted.
Oh, wow.
But ultimately decided to do it and was really phenomenal in the role.
Wow. She was also in the movie Frankenstein, so also directed by Danny Boyle.
I think there was something else that she was in.
Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle. She voiced Nisha.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a kind of a big one. Southpaw was kind of a big one.
Oh, Winnie Mandela. She played Winnie Mandela in Mandela Long Walk to Freedom.
Yes.
And Winnie Mandela actually apparently said that she really felt like she was not playing a role, but kind of channeling her for that movie.
Oh, wow. That's the highest form of praise.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. So did you ever see a movie called Rampage or ever hear of it?
No, but JDM, Jeffrey Dean Morgan is in that movie.
Right.
And The Rock is in that movie.
And The Rock, yes. And so was Naomi Harris.
Right. She played opposite The Rock.
Right. And so she has just been all over. It's crazy how many things that I have either seen her in or things that I want to see that she is in.
But she really credits Danny Boyle and this movie as kind of lighting up her career.
Right. Prior to that, she had been in a couple of one-offs and she had some regular series TV acting before this. And then kind of right on the heels of 28 Days Later, she picked up Pirates of the Caribbean. So her Instagram is a lot of shots of her and they're like professional done shots. And her Twitter is a lot of self-promotion, but she only tweets like once a month. She promotes a lot of the stuff that she's in, or her mother is, I think, a big writer. So she promotes a lot of stuff through there. But I did want to mention she is involved with something called the Prince's Trust. And it's a charity that's a cause that supports at-risk and disadvantaged youth.
Cool.
And it basically helps give at-risk youth 11 to 30-year-olds.
Wow.
And, right. Like you wouldn't think that, but she says that there's not a lot of outlets for young people, and thus they turn to crime and violence and drinking and drugs and things like that.
And not a lot for people who kind of age out of services.
Right. And so it gives them an outlet to sort of express themselves through acting and drama and other forms of art. So she was actually inducted into, and I'm going to mess this up because I didn't bookmark it.
Oh, I think I wrote it down. The office, she was appointed an officer of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth in 2017.
Right. And so that is for her charity and her works within the world of art. So I thought that was amazing. She's got a couple of other charities that she works with, Save the Children and Tiger Time. Tiger Time is animal conservation. And of course, Save the Children is a sort of an umbrella charity that encompasses child abuse, children with HIV and AIDS, disaster relief, education, and poverty. So she's a very, very busy woman.
It's really kind of cool to see how she blossomed out from her role as Selena. I mean, she's really done an incredible amount with her life in the time between the release of the movie and now.
Right. And, I would almost not even recognize her from being Selena.
I agree.
She's got some big time education chops. So she graduated from university. She trained at the British Old Vic Theatre School. And she received a social and political sciences at Pembroke College in Cambridge.
Which apparently she did not enjoy.
Right.
I read that little comment and I was like, oh dear.
I was like, could you please elaborate?
Yeah.
But no, they don't. They just leave that there. So yeah. She hasn't, her father hasn't been in her life, her entire life. Her mom has been a really big influence on her. Her mom, started her, to go to college when Naomi was 5. So, and went on to do, quite a few things. I can't even tell you, mainly because I didn't screenshot them or bookmark them. But so her mom is a very, very strong woman, and Naomi seems to be kind of a very, very strong woman in return. If you look at some of her social media posts, she's kind of a big feminist. So, and she talks about how the movie and TV world is sort of male dominated, and she would love
make
to
several comments like that.
Right. She would love to have characters written and directed by women for women, because a lot of times we watch women on the screen and we think, I would never do that, or I would never say that, or things like that. And I kind of think that that's one of the reasons why she picked the role of Selena, is because she was such a strong female character that was just kind of driven and kind of no BS. So I'm glad she got to make her break with that role.
I agree.
But that's kind of all that I had for Selena, for Naomi Harris. She's super interesting, and I'm going to have to look at a lot more stuff that she's in besides Pirates of the Caribbean.
So there's lots of little interviews on YouTube. I was looking for kind of a more extended interview about who she is and kind of how she's developed. But what I found mostly were little like 4-minute spots about her role in Moonlight or 2-minute spots about her role in Rampage. So there's a lot of stuff out there, but it's a lot of short stuff to sort through.
So some interesting trivia on her. She's a self-confessed teetotaler. She does not drink coffee. She has never smoked, taken drugs, or drunk alcohol. She credits her clean living lifestyle choice with her youthful appearance. She begins every morning with a cup of hot water topped with a slice of lemon.
Wow, maybe I need to do that.
And I've heard of this before that it like aids in digestion or something like that. But I've also heard that hot lemon water can erode your enamel in your teeth. So kind of a trade-off.
Definitely not something for someone who is grinding her teeth.
Exactly. I thought that was interesting. I stumbled upon that today of all days. But I can't imagine never having drunk coffee or alcohol. I mean, I've never taken illegal drugs. I tried marijuana after it was legal, thank you, in my state. I've never smoked a cigarette, so I can kind of identify with that. But I think maybe, I guess if you've never tried it, then you don't miss it. So life without coffee and wine, though.
Yeah, life without coffee. I could live without wine, although I did have a nice red wine last night, but life without coffee. I'm not sure I could do that.
I've switched to cold brew.
Aha.
Easier on the stomach.
Yeah.
Yep. But wine. Couldn't live without my wine.
All right. Anything else about Naomi?
That's all I got so far.
She's pretty cool.
She is.
So I have a fair amount in Whisperer's Corner. I think probably the biggest thing is it was announced this week that we are getting the third television series for Walking Dead.
Awesome.
It is supposed to launch in 2020, and it says it is about two young female protagonists and will focus on the first generation to come of age in the apocalypse as we know it.
Do you realize 2020 is only 8 months away?
Oh, it's crazy. So Matthew Negrete is going to be the showrunner. There are 10 episodes in season 1, and they're going to be filming in Virginia.
Really?
Really. Go ahead.
We're sticking with the whole Virginia thing. I mean, I know we film in Georgia and we pretend it's like Virginia, but
Well, so there was a pretty strongly worded article in Forbes when I was online tonight. And the title of the article is Virginia is a terrible location for a new Walking Dead show. And the author said it was uninspired. That was his word, given the available locations just in North America alone.
I'm pretty sure that Canada has some pretty good filming tax credits and stuff. Like, I would like to see them come to the Pacific Northwest. I mean, we've done East Coast, we've done Southwest. It's time to introduce the Pacific Northwest to zombies.
Well, and the writer was a man after our hearts, right? This is a quote from the article. Imagine Alaska when nights or days last almost 24 hours. 24 hours of total darkness would be pretty scary in a zombie apocalypse.
Oh, bless you. It was a vampire movie. It's not a zombie movie. It's a vampire movie. 40 Days of Night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was was it Barrow?
It must be Barrow. Barrow is where they get the least amount of sun.
Right. The sun sets for like 6 months, which is the perfect place for vampires.
That just sounds like hell. Having just come through an Alaskan winter and having it have been the hardest winter I think I've ever had, that really sounds awful.
No, what hell is a bird chirping at 3 a.m. because it's sunrise.
We're a ways away from that yet.
I don't know. My birds are early risers. And my dogs hate birds, so figure that one out.
So you don't get any rest.
Nope. In fact, you could probably hear one of my dogs barking every once in a while here in the background. Yeah, 'tis the season.
Well, so let's see. Other stuff in the Whisperer's Corner. One of the main executives from AMC, her name is Sarah Barnett, defended the season 9 ratings drops that we saw. So she pointed out that Walking Dead is still the top rated show on cable.
Yes, we know.
And just like you and I have said, she says, and this is a direct quote, our decline has really mirrored declines across basic cable.
Yep. Exactly. We are going to a la carte viewing for our television.
She also says that they really perceive that the ratings have stabilized with the back half of season 9. And this also is a direct quote. She says, the stability of the audience, the fact that it's such a powerhouse, and the fact that Angela has been able to reinvent and re-energize the show in this current season is something that we are genuinely excited about.
I got to agree with her. I mean, the people that are left watching are the solid hardcore fans. We're going to be in it till the end.
I think so.
Yep.
I mean, we've said that.
Yeah.
Let's see, another article that I saw tonight. So there were some pictures released of Tom Paine's post-Walking Dead makeover. You would not recognize him. He has like Brad Pitt short hair.
Oh my goodness.
Like
I'm
big bangs in his face. Oh my gosh.
Googling it right now.
I just put in Walking Dead news and it was one of the first like 5 or 6 articles that came up.
Oh my goodness. I love it.
He looks really good, but he definitely doesn't look like Jesus.
No, and I will miss the long locks.
I agree.
He's still got those piercing blue eyes, though.
Yes, he does. Yeah, I mean, you can see the actor, you can see that it's the same person, but he looks very different.
So clean cut.
Let's see. So there was some news about Fear the Walking Dead. So it is supposed to spawn a greater arc for the entire universe. Gimple didn't actually say what that was. He just kind of dropped that.
Of course.
Right?
Cryptic as usual.
A total Gimple non-news item. He also talked about the fact that it's going to further a plot that was started on the original series. So I don't know if that's Dwight or if there's something else that they're going to pull into Fear from the main series, but that's out there for this season. The Fear the Walking Dead trailer has been released, so if you haven't had a chance to watch it, you should. It's really good.
Maybe it's Heath. Maybe Heath gets his own show.
I don't know. They didn't show Heath. They did show the return of Daniel Salazar in the trailer.
Hashtag where's Heath?
And they also showed the meeting of Morgan and Dwight in the trailer.
Oh, I can't wait. I never thought I'd be saying, like, first 3 seasons, I never thought I'd be like, I can't wait for Fear the Walking Dead.
I just talked Fear the Walking Dead up to someone earlier today. I said, hang in there with the first 3 seasons. It's worth it to get the background, and it's worth it to get the reboot that we got in season 4.
Yeah, definitely. It's like they put the middle book at the beginning.
Right. A little more news about the main series. So season 10 starts filming on May 6th. We have a statement from Lauren Cohan that she has not left The Walking Dead. There is some discussion between her, Angela Kang, and Scott Gimple about a season 10 return. Not full-time, but in some episodes in season 10.
So, did you see the stuff about Whiskey Cavalier?
Yeah, and it sounds like Whiskey Cavalier probably is not going to get renewed.
Yeah, it's definitely on the chopping block.
But she also, in the article that I read at comicbook.com, made it sound like she has several offers for roles if Whiskey Cavalier falls through.
Oh, I'm sure. She will not be lacking for work. I just hope that she will be working on The Walking Dead because, I mean, even if they kill her character off, even if they kill Maggie off, I hate the way that they left it.
That they just kind of wrote her out. Yeah.
Yeah, they wrote, I mean, and in real life, she didn't even get the send off that people who go off the show usually get. And so I feel that she was cheated all around.
I agree. Last little bit of news. Chandler Riggs at Walker Stalker Con London said that he is open to playing Carl again in Hallucinations or Flashbacks. So I don't know that we're going to see Carl again, but Chandler Riggs has expressed some willingness.
I don't know how I feel about that. I have feelings, I just don't know what they are.
I told you I found some feelings last night while I was watching Buffy. I couldn't believe it.
And you're only in season 1.
And I'm only in season 1. It's only going to get better.
Right? So, Denai Guerrera explains her real-life Walking Dead Michonne moment to fend off a wild coyote.
Really?
It's on Jimmy Kimmel.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, so it was published by Just Jared about 10 hours ago, but she talks about it on Jimmy Kimmel Live. So I would say hunt that one down on YouTube and check it out. She was walking her dog late at night and had a coyote encounter. So
do you think she was carrying the katana?
I don't think so. She revealed that she armed herself. Oh, she armed herself with one of Michonne's practice swords. It's made from wood or hard plastic. I know how to use this thing, she told Kimmel. 7 years, I know how to use it. I can knock a coyote out with one of these.
Wow.
And she was defending her dog. She was walking her dog late at night, so.
Good for her.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I had a wolf encounter at one point, and it was on glacial ice. So
that was with Bella, right?
Right. It was with my mom's Cocker Spaniel and my brother's Rottweiler, who were the best of friends. And the Cocker Spaniel thought she would go and make a new friend of this big dog that was out in the middle of the ice. Well, it wasn't a dog. It was a wolf that we knew as Romeo. And there's actually been books written about this wolf that hung out at the glacier here in Juneau. And as soon as Bella got nose to nose with the wolf, she sat down and realized her mistake. And by this time, I was running towards her, and so was the Rottweiler. The Rottweiler knew better, but she was following me. And all the while in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't have a rock. I don't have a stick. Nothing. What am I going to do? Go negotiate with the wolf? So Bella turns tail and starts to run, which Romeo had been known to, he would chase and he would also pick up small dogs. So he picked Bella, their predator instinct. He picked Bella up in his mouth and he shook her and dropped her. Apparently Cocker Spaniel tastes awful. But he only left 4 little bruises where his canines were on her belly. So he had a very soft mouth. I think it was just kind of him either wanting to play or deciding that, I don't know, this crazy lady running and screaming at him with a Rottweiler behind her was just too much trouble. I don't know. But so I can kind of identify with Denai Guerrera fighting with a coyote for her dog.
All you needed was a sword.
All I needed was a sword. I got to remember to pack that instead of the Kimber that I pack now.
I'm sure the Kimber would do the trick too.
Right?
Yeah.
The Kimber is actually not for the wildlife, at least not the four-legged kind.
Right.
It's for the zombies. I know it's coming. It's only a matter of time.
I told one of my coworkers today I would be perfectly fine if the zombie apocalypse came. I believe we are at the end of human culture.
Right? We just need a pandemic to come wipe out like 90%. Just have that 10% that's immune. And I know that I'm probably in that 90% that's going to be wiped out. And I'm totally fine with that.
I'm going to die early on in the ZA. Yeah.
Yep. Hopefully it's like Coleman Domingo and I've got some rich guy's wine cellar to console me.
Well, shall we launch into our goods, bads, and uglies?
I think so.
All right, I'm going to go first.
Good.
Because I really did have a good.
Good.
So I thought the fast zombies and the rage zombies were super cool.
Oh my God, you stole my good! Kind of.
So I thought they were way creepier than Walking Dead zombies.
So this is a quote-unquote zombie film, but really it's an infection film, right?
They're very different zombies from the traditional zombies that we're used to.
So, but you don't have to shoot these guys in the head, and they do die from starvation after 6 months. So their bodies are technically still alive.
Well, and I wrote that down. So if they are still alive after they're infected, doesn't it make killing them harder ethically? Like I think about Jim killing that kid zombie,
Yeah.
and in somewhere in your brain has got to be this is a person who is still alive who is
Sick.
sick.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I'm in the moment. I think I could, defend myself just as quickly, but the aftermath of killing someone that maybe possibly had a 0.01% chance of being cured or saved or whatever. Yeah.
Because we know by this time the zombies in The Walking Dead are zombies, period. They're not going to be cured and become
Right.
human again.
Nope.
But there is the potential that the zombies in this apocalypse in 28 Days Later could be cured.
Right. So did you see that possible alternate ending?
So I watched one of the alternate endings. I didn't find them all online.
No, they were not all filmed. But I have seen two of the alternate endings. And I saw the one that I sent you from YouTube. And then there is also one that Jim dies in the hospital, and the end where Selena is making the big hello sign. Instead of talking to Jim, she's talking to a chicken.
Mm-hmm. I read about that. I didn't see that. The one that I watched was the one where Jim dies in the hospital, and then Selena and Hannah walk out together.
Right. And I'm really glad they didn't go with that ending.
Oh, I actually really like that ending.
Really?
Yeah, I really did. It played poorly to audiences, which is why they didn't go with it.
Right.
But I really liked it.
So you got the director's version of it where he's like, it gives you hope where Selena and Hannah go on. Mm-hmm. They just move on. Mm-hmm. And I'm the side of it where I'm like, oh, that's terrible. Like everyone dies,
And
they're
that's
eventually
how
going
it played
to die.
To the audience.
Right.
That's why they decided not to go with that cut for the audience, because that was the general consensus from the audience.
Right. So I loved your good. Mine was actually the infection part of the fast zombies. Because so there is a really good book. It's called Peeps. I gotta find it.
Like the Easter candy?
No.
I mean, but spelled like that.
It's spelled like that.
Yeah.
So Peeps is a book by Scott Westerfield, and it is a young adult novel, and it's actually they would be considered more vampire than zombie, but every other chapter in this book, because the vampire virus basically is actually a parasitic infestation in the human body. And every other chapter in the book talks about different parasites that we have in the real world currently that actually turn things into zombies.
There is a bug that does that.
Yes. So
it happens to bugs.
Right. So there's a fungus
that's what I'm thinking of.
Into zombies. Yes.
And that is the basis for the book, The Girl with All the Gifts.
Right. And so the kind of the story behind the whole infection and parasite and things like that is that these things make their hosts perpetuate their infection and infestation. So that's seemingly what the rage virus did, is they weren't eating these people, but they were looking to reinfect other people. And so I love that kind of sciencey portion of it where, I mean, there's true to life things. There is a wasp that produces zombie spiders.
Oh, that's so creepy.
Yeah. I mean, how creepier can you get than like a zombie spider? An emerald cockroach wasp that zombifies other cockroaches. There is a worm that turns grasshoppers into zombies. and there's a protozoan that creates zombie rats. And anyone with a cat will be familiar with this. It's toxoplasmosis.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So they have actually found that toxoplasmosis, when it's in rats or mice, it basically takes over their fear center, and they no longer have a fear of cats. And so the cats can catch the mice or the rats and they eat them.
And that's how it gets perpetuated.
That's how it gets perpetuated.
Oh, how interesting.
So so women aren't supposed to handle scooping cat litter when they're pregnant, because toxoplasmosis can infect humans.
Mm-hmm.
And you're most vulnerable to the negative side effects of it when you're pregnant. But it can live in the human brain symbiotically with the rest of the body. And what it actually seemingly does to humans is it makes us basically more cat friendly, thus perpetuating its cycle.
Oh, that is really interesting.
It's super creepy. So I love the infection portion of the movie, because there is stuff out there like this. And I am positive that they are testing crap like this in CDC clinics all around the world. What the scientist in the beginning said was, in order to cure it, you must first understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was actually kind of a behind the scenes online for 28 Days Later. And it talked about how I can't remember what virus it was, but basically these guys created it from stuff they bought it off the internet.
That's crazy.
I will have to find the YouTube of the breakdown of it and post it when this goes on air, because I mean, that's just crazy that there are things that you can buy, that people can engineer viruses just based off stuff they can buy off the internet.
That is crazy.
We'll be the cause of our own demise.
Well, a couple other things I wanted to say about the fast zombies. So they're very different from our Walking Dead zombies. 10 to 20 seconds to turn.
Right.
Still infected similarly, but we don't see the mucous membrane transition with Walking Dead zombies like we do with these zombies.
Correct. The dad gets it, a drop of blood in his eye.
Yeah.
Yep. Or if you just get blood in your mouth or anything like that. I mean, how many times have we seen somebody chop up a walker and, be covered in their face in blood, and you just know that they inhaled it or swallowed it, or yeah.
So I thought the differences were really cool too.
Right. And that's we've talked about this before on the show, where I think there's 4 or 5 different types of zombie genre, and Walking Dead is sort of the kind of unknown dead are alive, and 28 Days Later is more the humans are infected.
That was another point I wanted to make, is that the dead don't rise. Once you're dead, you're dead.
Right, because Hannah's dad wasn't actually shot in the head. He was shot multiple times in the torso and died. Mm-hmm. So, yep. And of course, 6 months later, if the zombies basically die of starvation. So.
And once they're gone, they're gone.
Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we've rolled through both of our goods because they were so similar. What was your bad?
So I've already kind of said it, but it was that it dragged so much in the middle for me. So I didn't really get sucked back in until the Selena and Hannah as sex slaves subplot. Then I was like, oh, that's diabolical. And I got sucked back in. I also had a hard time keeping all of the soldiers straight by name. I only really knew Mailer by name.
Right.
So there were kind of some holes just in terms of keeping my attention for the entire span of the movie, but I did get sucked back in toward the end.
Well, and I think the soldiers were kind of one thing that I saw about them. They were described as traditional lads, where they were just kind of like chauvinistic, yeah. So I don't think we were sort of meant to know the difference between each of them, other than they were all jerks and eventually cowards in the end.
But there was the one who was kind of the philosopher who ended up being taken out with Jim when they were
Right.
going to shoot Jim, and I didn't ever kind of put a name with him. And then there was West, and it took me reading the plot on Wikipedia to be like, oh, that's his name. So I just had a hard time kind of keeping them all straight.
Well,
and part of it was that my attention just didn't hold.
So Sergeant Farrell, the guy in charge,
Mm-hmm.
do you remember him? Red hair?
I thought that was West.
Was it?
See, I'm so confused.
I'm sorry, Major Henry West. You are correct. So I know him as the Doctor.
Right. I realized that. Christopher Eccleston.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he was a doctor for the first season of the 2005. I don't want to call it a reboot. It's not a reboot. It's the continuation,
Mm-hmm.
I guess. So for me, he was my first Doctor. And whenever you don't watch Doctor Who, right?
I don't.
So whenever you watch Doctor Who, you are sort of bonded to your first Doctor, no matter who it is.
Ah, okay.
But the next Doctor comes along and you're like, I'm never going to love this guy as much as I love my first Doctor or the last Doctor. And eventually they wear you down. David Tennant, Matt Smith. Yeah. So I love Christopher Eccleston because he was my first Doctor.
Very cool. So
yeah.
You were able to keep him straight and he held your attention because you were like, oh, there he is.
Just him. But all of the other guys, they were just, I don't know. They needed to, like, I don't know, give him facial scars or sleeveless uniforms or something. I don't know.
Somehow make them distinct.
Instead of Army Guy 1, Army Guy 2.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you have a bad?
I did. So, and it's kind of, I'm sure it can translate to a lot of other movies because everyone in a horror film has never seen a horror film. Everyone in a zombie film has never seen a zombie film. And so it just drove me nuts that when Jim is walking through a deserted London yelling, hello, everything in my body is just screaming, stop.
Because you know that something perfectly good is going to come in response to that call.
Even if it is not zombies, it's going to be some terrible human like Major Henry West,
Mm-hmm.
Or Negan or somebody. Nothing good can come of you yelling hello into the void.
Yes, very true.
And then going into the church and seeing all the bodies everywhere and being like, hello? It drives me nuts because nobody in a horror film has ever seen a horror film. Nobody in a zombie film has never ever seen a zombie film. And even Selena had her moment of she should have known better. I mean, she had been a survivor from the beginning, and here we are a month into the apocalypse, and Mark, and Jim all go to sleep in Jim's parents' house, not being packed up. I mean, when she has to kill Mark and she's telling Jim to go find clothes and get dressed, we need to leave, she's going through the cupboards. Wouldn't that be the first thing you did when you got in there? I mean, what else are you doing?
Good point.
So I'm like, everyone needs to be prepared at all times. You've survived them. I mean, I understand that her and Mark have been living in a little shop, a little convenience store for a while, and they've had all the supplies they kind of need. But honestly, if you're going to ransack a house, it's not going to be after the window's broken out by a rage zombie. So it's going to be when Jim is discovering his dead parents. What else are you doing?
Holding Jim's hand. But it probably would have been more productive to raid the kitchen.
Yeah, and the medicine cabinets,
Mm-hmm.
and fill your water bottle. And yeah, I mean, just Yeah, when you get somewhere, you don't sit down and relax until you've done all of those things because you never know when something's going to jump out and you're going to have to move on. So, yeah, that's my bad. Is it drives me nuts when, hello, is anybody there? Oh, so what was your ugly?
Well, I've kind of already said it, but Selena was my ugly. So
And she
she
was a
was
good ugly.
so kick-ass, but she was vulnerable at the same time. She was very capable. She could be cold when she needed to be cold, and she was everything I wanted in a female hero.
Yes.
Which is
Um,
actually why I liked the ending with her, the alternate ending with her and Hannah. Because I felt like, Hannah says, "What now?" And she says, "We live." And they
yeah.
march out of the hospital, and I thought, there go two really strong women.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I wouldn't have hated the original ending, but I liked the film debut ending better.
Which is the one that we watched.
Right, the one where
Okay.
Jim survives. Yeah.
Okay.
So I what there was a one moment that really made me love Selena because this is actually something that I had thought of if the apocalypse ever happens. I mean, almost word for word. When Jim asks, "So you know what I was thinking?" and Selena says, "You were thinking you'll never hear another piece of original
Oh,
music ever
yeah.
again. You'll never read another book that hasn't already been written, or you'll never see a film that hasn't already been shot."
Yeah, that was really cool.
That just struck me because that is so true. I mean, at least in your lifetime, society is not going to rebuild itself to the point where you're going to be able to go watch a new film or read a new book or anything like that. So I've almost had that thought verbatim before I saw this movie. So that one just struck me for her.
She was a great character. She was definitely my good ugly.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved her.
What about you? What was your ugly?
So my ugly was also a good ugly, but it was completely different. Mailer. I
Ah, okay.
I loved that they were able to basically capture one of the zombies and they were going to study it to see how long it lives, or maybe this is just like it'll cure itself after 3 months, or like they were able to capture one of their own after infection, and they were able to monitor him, and you know and exactly what West said, that he's going to tell me how long people are going to be infected before they die off. And I just thought that was so smart. That's one of the things that I'm always complaining about in The Walking Dead, is we wouldn't have these enormous hordes in real life because of the desiccation of dead flesh and the weather and just everything. The body breaks down, everything breaks down eventually. I mean, you know mountains can get crushed by glaciers and ground into fine silt. So time and weather and everything breaks everything down. And so I absolutely loved that they decided to study Mailer instead of just killing him.
And I think the only thing we've seen close to that in Walking Dead was when Milton in Woodbury was trying to research.
Right. That's right.
Which unfortunately that was really short-lived.
Right. But he did gain kind of a lot of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Fear the Walking Dead, the soldiers kind of did that too.
That's true.
They were
very barbaric, but
Right.
they did get some knowledge.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, that was my good ugly, was Mailer.
Cool. Yeah, I
And then,
thought
of
Mailer
course,
was a really great character. I really liked him.
I love that he took out West in the end also.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was totally fine with me that West got his very just desserts.
Right. Evil little men always get their comeuppance.
At least in a good horror film.
Right.
Well, so rotting potpourri, I've got, I think, quite a bit.
I've probably have a fair amount.
All right. Yeah, we're going to go late tonight. So Nikki Campbell Keith, hang in there.
Oh, man. Can you imagine if we had Brian?
Oh, right. Spooky chef.
Spooky chef. So I love that we opened up on scenes of violence from pre-apocalyptic times.
Well, and it's funny that you bring the opening up because that was one of the first things I had written down was that I really liked the origin in the chimp lab. It was very compelling right away. The visuals were compelling.
Yes. And so when, I think it was Alex Garland writing it or Danny Boyle directing it, they took a lot of their inspiration from things around the world that had happened. The scene in Piccadilly Square?
9/11.
Well, and this was filmed right around 9/11. And so when people saw the movie after that, they thought 9/11. And he didn't intend for it to be that way. He said that.
But you're talking about the wall of posters and postcards and
the missing and things like that. So he said that there was a earthquake in China where people in the main square were posting missing posters and things. And so he took his inspiration from that. And then there was the church scene with all the dead bodies. That was something. I think it was during the reign of Pol Pot.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he just took his inspiration of this, violent, dire circumstances, apocalyptic, type things from different things around the world. And so they open up on showing these things.
Yeah, it was a very compelling beginning. I mean,
right.
Very good beginning, had me hooked right away. And I really wish that the whole movie had kept me hooked the way the beginning did.
Yeah, there were a lot of slow spots, but it was mainly just to build that intimacy, Yeah,
maybe I need to watch it again because I didn't see it that way. And there were times that it felt like a chore, but I did get sucked back in and finished it out. So
yeah.
I definitely, as I mentioned earlier, found myself comparing it to The Walking Dead, especially, those barren hospital hallways and Jim being alone in that room. We never did get an answer about who locked him in and slipped the key under the door.
No, we didn't.
Which I thought was a really cool touch. I actually really liked that he was locked in and kind of barricaded in the way that Rick was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except we didn't get any full frontal male nudity with Rick.
Right.
Was that just the teeniest bit shocking to our puritanical American eyes?
Right. Completely. What is that? We don't usually see that on the screen.
So not used to male nudity. And I have to say, and this is speaking as a woman, I prefer female nudity.
It's just a little more neatly packaged.
Male nudity is just awkward sometimes. But Jim pulled it off well. Yeah. Is that, I don't know if that's that, would that be how they would leave him? I mean, of course, 28 days later, he would definitely have like a catheter and a feeding tube and,
Well, in an American hospital, he would have been in a gown, but it would have been, he probably would not have had any underwear on. He just would have been in the gown open in the back.
Right.
But unlike Rick, who was in his gown and boxer shorts. Because we really can't do any male frontal nudity in The Walking Dead.
Nope. Oh, that was funny.
Well, so one of the things that bothered me, and this was fairly early on, was just how empty London was. I expected bodies, I expected blood, I expected some sign of the carnage. And the other thing was also just those big stretches of open, unblocked highway on the way to Manchester.
So I have a reason. I have an explanation for this.
Okay.
Now, there probably would be some cars on the road, but think about it. 10 to 20 seconds for infection.
Now, that's a fair point.
So
I didn't think about that.
that's why the grocery stores and stuff weren't ransacked, is because everyone was headed to train stations and airports and ports, and they were not thinking about ransacking stores. They were not trying to drive out of London. They were trying to get as far away as fast as possible. And so you hear Mark telling about his story, his parents and I think his sister, that it was just hordes of people at the airport with, tons of cash trying to buy their way onto planes. And of course, everyone had that thought. So one person in the group becomes infected, and then it just spreads literally like wildfire throughout everyone. And so I think if you had seen maybe a train station or an airport, you would have got the large amount of bodies, kind of like you did in the church. I think there probably would have been a lot of people that would have flocked to their church for refuge or for prayer or things like that. So we got a little bit of that, but and if you're infected, the infected seem to seek cover during the day. They can go out in the day. They just prefer not to. So during the daylight, that's why they were in the tunnel, So I think that was part of that explanation for me.
Okay. That makes some sense.
Right?
The speed with which they turn makes some sense.
Right. And, they weren't wandering around like in The Walking Dead in the broad daylight. They sought refuge from the sunlight, even though they could go out in the sunlight if they wanted to, or for necessary reinfection purposes. Talked you off the ledge for that one?
Got me close to the ledge anyway. Got me close to the edge of the ledge.
Pulled you back just a little.
Mm-hmm. So I liked the church, speaking of the church, and it actually reminded me of some of the early Fear the Walking Dead scenes where we saw Nick in the church.
Nick. Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. And what's funny is when I saw Fear the Walking Dead, I immediately thought 28 Days Later.
Oh, and so
cool. When I saw 28 Days Later again, I immediately called back to Fear the Walking Dead.
And I have to say, speaking of the church, since we're on the topic, that zombie priest was really scary.
Priests are scary anyway.
I just thought that was a really good early depiction of the fast rage zombie, and I really liked it. It was really scary.
I'm not going to be able to find it really quick. The graffiti inside the church. Did you happen to see what it said?
I did not.
It said something to the effect of the end is really effing nigh. And they didn't
awesome.
say effing.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Let's see if I can find it.
While you're looking at that, so this is a gripe that I had about Walking Dead, but I would expect Jim to be quite a bit more debilitated after 28 days in a coma.
Yeah.
Rick was a little more broken, but not much.
Yeah.
And I just would expect just the muscle loss, the loss of conditioning. I would expect both of those characters to have been a lot more debilitated.
Definitely. And also still suffering the effects of probably a TBI.
Yeah, in Jim's case, definitely the effects of the TBI. Yeah.
Right. So the writing on the wall in the church said, "Repent, the end is extremely effing nigh."
That's awesome.
So the soldiers. So we start off the movie 28 days later. That's less than a month after Patient Zero, which is even probably less time than Total Chaos. Because Selena said that it started in the villages and the market towns. So, maybe a week to get to the larger cities and things like that. And then for the army to get involved in everything. Less than a month into the apocalypse, the soldiers are putting guns in their mouths thinking that there's nothing to live for anymore.
And they're being bribed with a rape squad.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm just like, a month really isn't a lot of time to break down. Like I've lasted some pretty harsh times for way longer than a month. I mean, just look at people in concentration camps. They last for years, thinking that there's no tomorrow, there's no future, there's no reason to live. And this guy's putting a gun in his mouth after less than a month? You're a wussy. I'm pretty sure the human race would have been just fine without you, dude.
Yeah, they were all pretty squicky anyway.
They were.
Ugh. So I thought that they seemed to play kind of fast and loose with the power grid. So how did Jim watch videos of his family if there was no power?
So I actually don't think that was a legit video. I think that was something in his head. Because it was filmed from the first person perspective. Because he drank the orange juice, but you didn't see him drink the orange juice. It was like his mind's eye.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't catch that.
But it was definitely looked like a family movie would.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was meant to. But yeah, for me, because he was standing over his parents' dead body. For me, that was just his memory. It wasn't him watching a video. But having said that, there was a scene when Mark and Selena take Jim back to the convenience store where parts of the convenience store have stuff lit up.
Ah, okay.
So there is kind of a continuity error there. So, yeah.
Well, and I did see that, was it Frank? Was that Hannah's dad?
Yeah.
Had wired their Christmas display with a battery. So I saw that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and one of the little trivia pieces for the film is that it was shot almost completely in sequence.
Oh yeah, I saw that, except the alternate endings.
Right, and only a few reshots were done, and one of the reasons why is because they had such a narrow time frame to film in places that they were filming. Like the motorway and Piccadilly and places like this, where they sometimes had like a 20-minute window to set up, shoot, and get traffic back open.
And that it's actually super, super rare for films to film in sequence like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Which had to make it a breeze for editing.
Well, and they also said that it helped the actors stay in character better.
Well, and so that was another thing is being able to only take one or two takes for a shot would normally be hard because somebody gets the giggles and then everyone has to take an hour,
Right.
But this, again, was filmed around 9/11. And I think I read one thing where it said one of the scenes where the four of them, Frank, Hannah, Jim, and Selena, are quote unquote celebrating. And I don't know what time. I don't know if that was when Jim and Selena just came into the flat or if it was when they were in the field, but it was when they were quote unquote celebrating. And the actor who plays Jim said that 9/11 had just happened hours previous.
Oh my God.
And so it was very weird to film a celebratory scene when the mood was so somber.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can imagine that the rest of the film actually became a little easier to be somber and dire and post-apocalyptic the days after 9/11 happened.
Wow,
so
that's crazy.
I know it's very chilling to think about. Yeah.
So this kind of plays a little bit into that, but I was thinking about the scene where Hannah really says that they need each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about some of the bigger messages of a film like this, man's inhumanity to man, people killing people. But we also have the opposite, which is that people really need each other.
They do. And I think we've seen it in the movies and the television shows that we watch and in things like 9/11, where we see the very, very best of people and the very, very worst of people. And there's almost no in between. You're either, the hero and self-sacrificing, and everybody comes together in spite of their socioeconomic, political, race, religion, color, whatever. And we all come together in this kind of time, or we all become Negan.
Right. Or the governor.
or Major West.
Right.
We start a rape cult.
Oh, God. That really bothered me. It really hooked me back in, but it really bothered me, which is probably why it hooked me back in.
I love what he had to say about the whole man's inhumanity of man. He said, let's see, this is what I've seen in the 4 weeks since infection. People killing people, which is much of what I saw in the 4 weeks before infection, and the 4 weeks before that. And before that, people as far back as I care to remember, people killing people, which to my mind puts us in a state of normality right now. Because Sergeant West said that, I think Bill's got a point. If you look at the whole of life on the planet, man has only been around for a few blinks of an eye. So the infection wipes us all out. This is a return to normality.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was a really interesting point.
Yeah. And the whole, this is really just people killing people, which is what we've seen time and time before, which is why we need a pandemic to wipe 90% of us out. There just aren't enough resources for all of us, and we're growing at an exponential rate.
Okay, so 2 things about the pandemic. I want a giant stash of Valium like Selena's.
Right?
And
are you trying to kill me? No, I'm just making it so you don't care.
And I hope that the soundtrack to the zombie apocalypse is as totally random as this soundtrack was.
So, speaking of soundtracks, that was almost my good. The music build up to the climax of the movie when Jim is going back to rescue Hannah and Selena, and the music just builds and builds and builds, and it just adds to your anxiety, and you're watching Jim almost become like one of the rage zombies. I loved the score of this film.
I think my comment was actually, this soundtrack is as random AF.
That's funny. And I did learn something tonight reading about the soundtrack of this movie.
Uh-huh.
There was one song that they got the rights to use in the movie, but not on the soundtrack. And I can't remember which song it was, but I didn't know that was a thing, which totally makes way more sense in a lot of the soundtracks that I've bought over the years, that I've been like, no, there was like 3 more songs in the movie. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, because like 2 days ago, it was Rex Manning Day, which if you're an Empire Records fan, you will know exactly what I mean by Rex Manning Day. The Empire Records soundtrack had like a third of the songs that were in the movie, and it was super disappointing, and I never understood why. And reading about 28 Days Later, that apparently you can get the rights to use a song in the movie but not put on the soundtrack. And I don't know why you would do it that way, because normally that's where a lot of artists kind of get their break, is in movie soundtracks.
Right. Why, as an artist, would you not want the royalties for the film and the soundtrack?
Right? That was crazy to me, but I had never known that until I read that tonight.
They didn't have that problem with the Captain Marvel soundtrack. Because I downloaded it after the movie.
It is all awesome 90s chick rock.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Speaking of loved it, I loved the big house as a set piece. I thought it was very suspenseful. It helped kind of make that ending with the soldiers much more tension-ridden.
Huh. How so, do you think?
Just kind of the way that they were going through the house, and the house seemed like endless. It was so big, and it just seemed like they just kept going to another level, another room, another level. And I thought that was really suspenseful.
And I believe they call those manors, not house.
Yes, there you go.
A house has like 4 or 5 rooms. This was a manor. But so did you see the little bit of trivia on that?
No.
So they were only allowed to film on the first floor of the house. So all of the shots that you think are on the second floor, there's one where Jim jumps out of a quote unquote second story window, are actually only shot on the first floor of the house because the person living in the house lived on the second floor and would not allow filming.
Okay, that makes me even more impressed with the use of the house as a set piece then, because they really did a good job making you feel like you went through the whole house.
Right?
And like you were, again, going from floor
room
to
room
floor to floor. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think at one point, I think I felt like, we were in the basement and then we were in the attic and the second floor and the first floor and we're running outside and we're running back in and we're jumping out of windows. Yeah. I think the frenetic pace of the way the film was cut there at the end helped to sort of convey that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. That was pretty cool.
So what did the rain finally coming symbolize? Do you know? Did you get any vibe from that? I thought it had to be symbolic, but I didn't really know what they were trying to convey.
One of the reasons why Frank and Hannah had to leave their flat in London is
was
because
the water.
Wouldn't effing rain in England,
Right.
And also we think of rain as cleansing. I think we don't have this problem in Alaska for the most part, but in places where there's a lot of smog, the rain sort of cleanses that and you have a clear day afterwards. And so they kind of did that in the filming of the movie where, you always see like clouds and it's always gray or dark or things like that. Well, at the end, when they were trying to signal the plane, it was bright and sunny.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think maybe I don't know if it just happened to be raining on film day or if that was set up to be that way.
Okay, so since we're on the end, do you really think that the rest of the world is clear while Great Britain was quarantined?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
And does this come from knowledge of the sequel, or is this just the feeling that you got from this movie?
So, again, it's my reasoning of that it spread so quickly.
That it didn't make it off the island.
Right.
Okay.
Like, how would you get onto a plane and have the plane safely land in, New York or Paris or Scotland or any of those places?
If they're going to turn in 10 to 20 seconds.
Right.
Yeah.
And if it somehow did get on some sort of freight ship with the crew, by the time, even if the ship piloted itself into port in New York, I don't know how long it takes, but I can't imagine with our quarantines and things like that for incoming stuff that anything would get past anything. Look at when we had bird flu and we were taking everybody's temperature that came into the country. Do you remember that?
I don't. I remember the whole freak out about Ebola, but I don't remember them taking people's temperature with bird flu.
So they were actually using cameras, the infrared cameras.
Ah, okay.
To look at the temperature of people in crowds as they were going through customs, and they would pull out anybody who was, over 99 degrees. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
So I can't imagine that it would have spread to the rest of the world. I would think it would have been quarantined.
No, I think that's a really good thought, that it just didn't make it off the island because the people who were infected turned so fast.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
And they were so obviously infected with something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not like a bite that you could hide.
Right. There was no slipping that past anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. There was one more thing I was going to point out, and I cannot remember what it was. There was another really great movie about a kind of a infection in in Europe, and I can't remember what it was. But they basically literally walled off, and I think it was Scotland that they walled off. Oh, now I can't find it.
Well, while you're typing, I'm going to tell you what my ultimate reaction was. When the movie ended, I was like, what? That's it?
I think you were supposed to feel that way, though. And then, of course, we have 28 weeks later, and we also have 28 days later, The Aftermath, which is the graphic novel that was written after the movie. So have you looked at any of the stuff about the graphic novel?
I have not. So
it has 4 stages in the graphic novel. And it kind of, there's a one point where it gives you almost the complete background of where the rage virus comes from. The 2 doctors that developed it and why they developed it and some stuff around that. And then, of course, how it got out with the animal rights activists, which actually one of the doctors who created the virus didn't like the work that they were doing. And he actually was the one that called the animal rights activists and had them break in. That's why they had a key card, and he didn't intend for it to get out. He intended for his work to get destroyed. But of course, the work always gets out. And then we get the backstory of the 28 days, what happened during the 28 days of the outbreak.
Okay.
Yep. And then we get another survivor story about the aftermath 1 month later. And then we get a 1-year follow-up about a year about the quarantine and how the rest of the world wasn't actually infected and, things like that. So I kind of want to read the graphic novel now.
Well, if you do, you'll have to talk about it on the podcast.
I definitely will. So the other movie that I was thinking of that's kind of similar to this, it's kind of like what would happen if they actually walled off England. It's called Doomsday. And it had, let's see. Oh, I can't remember her name. She's a pretty big actress. I think it's Emma Cleesby?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Let's see if I can find the synopsis. A lethal virus spreads throughout Scotland, infecting millions and killing hundreds of thousands. To contain the threat, acting authorities brutally quarantine the country as it succumbs to fear and chaos. The quarantine is successful. 3 decades later, the Reaper virus violently resurfaces in London. An elite group of specialists, including Eden Sinclair, is urgently dispatched to Scotland to retrieve the cure by any means necessary. Shut off from the rest of the world, the unit must battle through the landscape, and that has become a walking nightmare. So Scotland is quarantined, and of course there's always, a certain portion of the population that is immune. And so everyone that survived 3 decades later is immune to the virus. And there's a doctor behind the wall that claims to have the cure. And really, the cure is basically derived from the blood of the survivors, much like we've treated AIDS. There's been a couple of patients who have been, quote unquote, cured of AIDS because they have been treated with people's blood who are immune to the virus. And so...
Really? I haven't heard that.
Oh my goodness. There was just one that made the news the other day.
Huh.
Yeah, he's like only the second person in the world to be cured, quote unquote, of AIDS.
I mean, I know that people have cleared it because of massive regimens of antiretroviral meds. But...
Right. your viral load is basically undetectable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'll have to send you the article. But
Cool.
yeah, so Doomsday isn't quite a zombie film. There are kind of infected people, and it's similar to you get the blood on you and immediately you turn, So that movie came out in 2008. So it could almost be seen as an alternate ending, an follow-up to, if they had walled off England. Of course, in this case, it's Scotland. But if they had walled off England and London and, just contained the virus, and everybody who survives because they're immune and they're also survivors, they didn't get killed by anything else. So, but of course, it was very Mad Max, hellish landscape with people that were cannibals and horrible torturists and things like that. So, not a movie I would recommend to you if you didn't like 28 Days Later.
No, if you're going to make me choose between that and the follow-up to 28 Days Later, I'll probably choose the follow-up to 28 Days Later.
Because Jeremy Renner and Idris Elba.
Right.
So did you notice on the wiki, there are more alternate endings that
I saw that. It looks like there are 4 alternate endings.
Yes. So I think the closest one to the original ending is the hospital dream, where they're flashing between Selena and Hannah trying to revive a gunshot wounded Jim, and he's flashing between himself in the bike accident and being in the hospital then and being in the hospital now, and it ends with him dying on an operating table after his original accident. So the whole zombie apocalypse thing was just a fever dream in his death. Which I think that's kind of a cool ending too.
Mm-hmm.
And so did you see the radical alternative ending?
I saw the entry on the wiki, but I didn't watch it.
So it completely diverges before they meet the soldiers. So Hannah's dad is infected, and instead of encountering the soldiers, they take him to where the test research facility was that originally housed the chimps. They basically stumble upon that. And one of the creators of the virus has locked himself in, and he's not letting them inside. And eventually they show him Hannah's dad and that he's infected. And so he's like, okay, you can come in. And yes, there is a cure for the virus, but
this is the total transfusion one, right?
Right. It is a total transfusion of donor blood. And so it's basically a dialysis. You take out the bad blood and you put in the good blood. But of course, we don't actually have dialysis that will strip the virus. It has to be blood from an uninfected person. So Jim sacrifices himself. Of course, he's a match for Hannah's dad.
Of course.
And so he sacrifices himself so that Hannah can have her dad. And so he gets drained of all of his blood, and Hannah's dad comes back from the virus, and, they sort of move forward, and it kind of ends on Jim being strapped down to the same bed that the chimp was strapped into the beginning, and he's got the rage virus.
But Danny Boyle decided that was not realistic because you couldn't completely scrub someone's system of the virus.
Exactly. It's not like you can rotor-rooter their veins or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was scrapped. And I'm really glad that was scrapped because of that, because that would have just been a little too much suspension of disbelief based on the whole, it's not like you can bleach his veins, So, but I find that is interesting that there were so many alternate endings and the one that they finally decided on.
Well, and I think, again, if I had to choose my own adventure, I would choose Jim dying and the 2 women going forward.
Wouldn't have been terrible. You could have talked me off of that ledge.
Well, before we wrap up, I watched a little video on YouTube, which was 7 things you didn't know about 28 Days Later. Did you watch that?
Ooh, I did not.
So the chimpanzees were from Stuttgart, Germany. There are apparently only 2 places in the world that you can get chimps for filming. And it's either California or Germany, and they opted to go with Germany because it was closer.
Right.
There was discussion about whether or not to show corpses in the hospital. They decided that it would be more realistic but less cinematic to show corpses, so that's why they had the empty hospital hallways. The third thing, in our church where we have kind of a makeshift graveyard, the extras were paid with a cup of tea.
I think that's the most British thing to ever Brit. That's amazing.
Let's see. I think number 4, I have this note that just says had to have competitive effects. And I think it was that they put a lot, they put a lot of money into things like explosions and visual effects because they felt like that was the way that they needed to hook the American audience.
Ah.
And then number 5, you brought this up already. It was actually shot mostly in sequence, which is very rare in movies.
Yes.
Number 6, we got a whole new ending. It actually ended with the car breaking out of the compound initially.
Huh.
So it stopped with them breaking out after West is killed.
Interesting.
Which I think would have been a very unsatisfying ending, so I'm really glad that they redid that.
Definitely.
And then 7, so originally they only had 100 buckets in the chute on the rooftop, and it looked really lame. So Danny Boyle demanded that they get 1,000 buckets for the shot, and they got it all together, and there were actually 1,000 buckets on that rooftop, or various containers.
I was going to say they weren't all buckets,
right,
because there were laundry baskets that would have maybe held an inch of water.
So, but they really went the extra mile to find various and sundry containers to meet his demand.
Oh, that's funny.
Mm-hmm. I thought so too. So those were 7 things you didn't know. Actually, you knew one of them about 28 Days Later.
So the ending that we saw, do you know what the pilot said of the jet that they were signaling?
I read it, but I don't remember it.
So, fun fact, one of the guys that broke into the research facility in the beginning had a very distinct Finnish accent. And at the end, the pilot that flew over was speaking in Finnish.
Okay, I read that.
He said, "Will you send a helicopter?"
Ah.
So the whole, do you think he saw us? He obviously saw them this time. Somebody has posted on IMDb that the pilot said, "No, I didn't see anything." One of the people breaks in and says, "Have you seen anything?" And the pilot says, "No, I haven't seen anything." But every place else said, the pilot says, "Will you send a helicopter?"
Huh.
But I don't speak Finnish, so I'm just going to have to take their word for that.
I definitely got the feeling that they had been sighted and that they were going to be rescued.
Yes. Yes. I don't think there would be so much reason to fly that low to the ground in a jet like that. Well, so have I talked you off the ledge of this movie?
I don't know that I'm going to watch it again. I realized that I had more good things to say about it than I thought I did, but I don't know that I'm going to watch it again.
Oh, you don't have to watch it again.
Besides, I've got 7 seasons of Buffy and 4 seasons of Angel to watch.
And I have to go read The Walking Dead because next week, I think we are going to switch it up a little, and we are going to do a episode by book comparison of a episode of Walking Dead.
But we don't know which episode yet, so we'll surprise you all.
Nope, Marnell has to figure out which book she has. So yeah, we were in the off season. We really didn't have a linear plan for this, and I think maybe we'll kind of do a on and off. One week we'll do a zombie movie review, and the next week we'll do a book to TV show review for The Walking Dead.
Yeah. Until we get to Fear and Good Omens.
Right.
Which they're both essentially premiering simultaneously. So we've taken on a whole new series that we're going to be podcasting on this at the same time that we're doing Fear.
Because Marnell doesn't have jaw-clenching problems from stress enough as it is.
Right.
No, this is where my jaw gets to relax and I get to smile and laugh. But, yeah. So, I think that'll be a good breakup. So if you like listening to us break down the movies, you can listen to the movie breakdowns. If you like to listen to the Walking Dead stuff, you can listen to the Walking Dead stuff. But I recommend you listen to both because, hey, I'm biased.
Right. We would be happy if you listened to both. So just a little bit of listener feedback. So about 28 days later, Thomas Reese, hey, Thomas, good to see you, said, seen it in theaters when it first came out. There were 20 people in the theater when I got there and 8 when I left. I think it's a so pretty sad. I know, right? So apparently a few people suffered from the lag in the middle, just like I did. He said, I think it's a pretty awesome movie. I know there's social commentary in Romero's films, but I feel this, for the first time, the director really laid it out for us. What's the difference? All I see is people killing people. And it was the introduction of fast-moving zombies, which I like. I'll take a listen. Victoria Morris said she would rewatch it because I specifically said I would love a British perspective, and she sent me a couple of messages today, so I'll get to that. So we had comments about the article that I posted saying that Whiskey Cavalier was expected to be canceled. Mm-hmm. Nathan Welty's feedback to us was, it was a meh show. Pedro Pelez said, I guess Maggie will be back for season 10, and I'm guessing season 11, which is likely the final season.
Wow.
Cindy Patton said about Whiskey Cavalier, I like the show. It's fun and cute. TV needs a little bit of that, in my humble opinion. I'm bummed that it might get canceled, but I'd be happy to get Maggie back.
I know. I'm bummed because I would have liked to see her have her own breakout role and be the star of something. But yeah, the selfish part of me likes having Maggie back.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more of her story.
Yeah.
Sarah Catherine Guest said about Whiskey Cavalier, there was nothing about the promos that made me want to watch. And then our very own Brian said regarding getting Maggie back, welcome back for the final season.
Touche.
Just a little more about the third series. So Cindy Patton's response was, what? Gary Dombrowski's response was, snooze. So we got a 50-50 response.
Oh, that's funny.
I'll watch it. Hopefully I don't hate watch it like I did the first 3 seasons of Fear.
I'm here for it. Yeah. I mean, they've done it before where they introduced a cast that I just couldn't identify with, and I didn't care a lick about any of them, and took my advice in season 3 and killed almost all of them off, and now I really like the new cast. So they could totally do that. I'm on board for it.
I told you we're going to be podcasting from my nursing home.
These episodes are going to get super long when senility sets in.
Right. I'll just say the same thing over and over.
What were we talking about?
So a little more regarding 28 Days Later, Bryce said, one of my faves, a good aggressive take on zombies. Nice to have an aggressive enemy. Thomas O'Mara, and this surprised me, said he's never seen it.
That actually doesn't surprise me. He was a late in life TWD fan. So I don't think he was in with the zombie genre. He's not really a horror person that I can remember, right?
Well, and I was a late in life Walking Dead fan too. So, you're dragging me kicking and screaming into movies like Let Us Pray and 28 Days Later, which, by the way, the farther I get from Let Us Pray, the better I liked it. So.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. We're going to try and podcast a zombie movie from each genre because there's different genres of zombie movies. And this, of course, was an infection movie. So I will have to find a good one for the next one.
As far as we know, Pollyanna McIntosh was not in any of them.
No. I'll have to pick a Romero zombie movie.
I think that would be good.
Yeah. Going back to the roots.
Yep. Let's see. So what we got from Victoria Morris, and then that will wrap up our feedback. She said she couldn't find 28 Days Later on Netflix or Prime in the UK, so she's rewatched part of it via other means. I've forgotten just how great it was. The opening scenes of deserted London are spectacular, really iconic. I remember being really wowed by that when I saw it at the cinema. The other scene that sticks in my mind is the blood dripping into Frank's eye. Beyond those scenes, it's the amazing cast that really makes it work. Cillian Murphy, Christopher Eccleston, and Naomi Harris, dream team. And I loved the fast zombies, infected humans. I don't think I'd seen them before this film.
Yeah, I have to agree with Cillian Murphy. I mean, I'm glad we went with Naomi Harris for our featured cast member. But Cillian Murphy is, he will always be the creepo in Red Eye for me.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't think I've seen him in anything else.
He was in Inception, Red Eye.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Gosh, The Dark Knight Rises. He was Scarecrow. Dr. Jonathan Crane.
Really?
Yes. Tron Legacy.
Oh, so he's been in quite a bit of different things as well.
Oh, definitely. And of course, Batman Begins. He was in 2 movies. And then he did the voice for the video game. He was in The Girl with the Pearl Earring. He was, let's see.
Oh, he had a big arc in Peaky Blinders, which is supposed to be a really good series.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. Oh, pre-production, A Quiet Place 2. Oh, really?
Oh, there you go.
Did you watch A Quiet Place?
No, but of course you did.
I did, of course. It's a horror movie. So, for those of you who did not watch A Quiet Place, think the Bird Box on Netflix, only for hearing instead of sight. So, aliens or whatever invade the Earth, and they can't see, but they have very acute hearing. So they hunt us by hearing. And so the story is around a family who has a deaf child. So they were prepared in the apocalypse that they were able to speak to each other without speaking. They, sign language, and they lived on a farm somewhere and in a small town. So they were able to take certain precautions, like, they would spread sand on where they would walk to and from town, because otherwise you're not walking on the crunchy leaves, you're walking on quiet sand. It was a really, really cool movie. But I don't see how they're going to make a part 2. But okay, Cillian Murphy. Interesting.
Well, I may have to go back and watch the Batman movies to see him.
I really recommend the movie Red Eye if you have not seen it. He plays a bad guy who he kind of what's the word I want? He blackmails a woman who is a hotel manager in a kind of swanky hotel, because there's some foreign dignitaries or something that are coming, and he's trying to set up their assassination, and they're stuck on a red-eye flight together. And so it's her sitting next to a guy who is violent and, trying to set up an assassination and everything. And he just plays this sociopath so well. I mean, it's like he reminds me of American Psycho. I love the movie Red Eye. I'm gonna have to go watch it.
I'm gonna have to go watch some Buffy.
Yes, you are. Rachel McAdams is the female heroine in the movie, and most of you know her from Mean Girls.
God, it's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
She played Regina George, so the blonde chick.
Long time since I've seen that movie.
She is amazing in this movie. You do not see Regina George. But yeah. So I just loved the cast of this movie. I loved the storytelling of this movie, and that, we got fast, violent zombies.
I definitely like the twist on the zombies, and I still think Selena was just capable and phenomenal, and the woman that I would want at my side if I were in the ZA.
Definitely. It's probably why she got the role of Miss Moneypenny.
Ah. If I were a Bond fan, I would watch that, but I'm not a Bond fan.
Yeah, me either.
Oh, we have one other little piece for Whisperer's Corner, which I just saw as I was looking at stuff for our Facebook page. Preacher is getting canceled after season 4. So this is going to be the last season of Preacher.
Yeah. Not unexpected.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm bummed out, but I'm not surprised.
It never really found its audience.
Mm-hmm.
I think it actually could have done better had it been on like an HBO where they could really go full out.
They went pretty full on.
They did. I mean, there was that whole scene with the exploding guy and the taint hanging from the light.
Right.
Right?
The Allfather.
The Allfather.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
And the broken arm. I'll never forget when Jesse broke Donnie's arm.
I've obviously forgotten it.
Oh, it's when he talks to him about the noise that a rabbit makes when it's scared.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And then all the school kids on the bus made that noise to tease him. So funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they could have probably hit a little bit more of a market, but not much. It's pretty niche.
Well, for anybody who's still watching, join us when they premiere it, in August?
I think so.
Yeah, they're premiering the season really late. And
really late.
We will cover it on the Good News, the Gospel According to AMC's Preacher.
Yep.
All right, but until next week,
just remember, take it one dead day at a time.
That was pretty good.
It's because I always feel like I'm going ahead of you.
And I've learned to time it to you.
That's funny.
All right, everybody, have a good week.
Have a good week.
Bye.